Scott Murphy here, and I wanted to talk to you guys today about how the experiences we're going through with this quarantine are somewhat similar to the physiological responses our bodies go through when we're adapting to a workout. Client and I, client slash friend of mine this morning, who's pretty intuitive about training, brought up the subject of exercise variation, and some analogies occurred to us that are kind of in keeping with what we're going through with this quarantine right now. And as I mentioned just now, there's some parallels with how we adapt to workouts. Namely, in the initial phases, we have our bodies will and our senses, which our bodies are full of sensory apparatus. Not just our eyes, ears, and sense of smell, but our senses will eagerly and desirously uh, pay attention to the stimuli that's coming to us. So in the case of the quarantine, we are home with our families during times of the day in which we typically aren't. So that's a new stimulus for us. And because we're seeing our loved ones during times in which we typically don't get to, our sense of sight, sound, smell, all those things will be kind of uh, they will be stimulated pleasantly, as a result of being around them. So when your kids are asking you to make them breakfast and things like that, because you don't typically see them at that time, you're like, oh, of course, honey, I'll gladly do that for you. Um, and the next phase are actual anticipatory adaptations made in order to continue to feel that pleasure, um, allow your senses to experience that pleasure even more efficiently as a result of being stimulated. And so what happens is your sense of sight, your sense of sound, your sense of smell, actually the apparatus that's recognizing that has the ability to recognize those things that about your family that stimulate your senses, how they look, being able to recognize immediately that they're in the kitchen or whatever have you, or being able to hear their voices, or being able to smell your wife's perfume, and all those things are going to be increased. So your body literally makes adaptations and nerves change and all those things, allowing you to more quickly pick up on those things so you could enjoy that pleasurable contact more efficiently. Now with training, the adaptations made to a given workout that you're doing entail the nerves being able to fire the muscles more quickly. The muscles themselves, the contractile apparatus or the proteins become thicker and more capable of producing force, and the energy apparatus becomes capable of storing the right amount of energy and being able to convert that energy more quickly in order to do the work more vigorously. Adaptations are made that way because the body is anticipating that in a desirous way, and wanting to perform those tasks more efficiently and everything, because the stimulus is something that the body interprets as novel or pleasantly surprising, or just surprising in general. And then what eventually happens beyond that is you start to recognize the stimulus as redundant, and the body starts to get bored of it. So like when your family's calling you, so like for example, what it was initially the case in which your wife would be like, oh, honey, could you take out the garbage? You're like, oh, of course, sweetie, gladly, I'll gladly do that. Eventually starts to turn into, oh yeah, I'll get to it whenever I have a chance, and or you don't hear it all at all, and she has to yell your name several times in order to get you to listen to her, if at all, or you just completely forget that she said something to you. Same thing with your kids. And now with the body, on the other hand, the adaptations it used to make in response to the stimulus you presented to it, it's no longer doing so. In much the same way, the body's recognizing that it's been presented with this stimulus so frequently and has survived it, and it's become bored with it. So its tendency to respond to it is very minimal, no matter how heavy you try to make the weights or how intensely you try to train. Much like your kids or your spouse yelling at you in order to get you to do things, it the that doesn't really incline you to want to do it any more than you did before, just simply because you're bored of it in general. So what eventually happens, and particularly if you plan it, but this quarantine will has it built into it anyway because it will eventually end. um, the 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 stimulus with our families is going to change. We're going to eventually go back to work. Kids are going to go back to school. And what happens is we start to be exposed to them in different ways and at different times of the day and things like that. And once again, our sensory apparatus and all that stuff and our inclination to pay attention to them and devote our senses to them is going to be increased again. And we will once again, oh, so nice, how was your day at school, how was your day at work? And not remembering that just a couple weeks before you wanted to wring someone's neck. And same thing with the training. Like, now, if you have a trainer or someone who's paying attention to these things, they're going to rotate workouts to keep this from happening, and or alter the training so that schedules are changed, movements are changed, and not necessarily you abandon the old stuff, but you integrate new stuff in order to make the stimulus more intervaled, so it's returned to at a interval in which the body remains enthusiastic with it. And so, yeah, you start new movements and things like that, or integrate new movements. And what happens is that the body starts to find that stimulus surprising again. And the physiological apparatus starts to make adaptations that are super compensatory or productive or in the direction of performance enhancement. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I know I was pretty long-winded with it, but feel free to leave something in the comments and let me know if what I said made any sense. Anyway, hope to see you guys again soon. Thanks so much.